Right. Let's move on now to the idea of entering the U.S. cannabis market, right? You are in the U.S. with beer and other products.
I'm having a non-alc beer, so I'm not drinking alcohol at 3:30 in the afternoon, Pablo, okay?
I hear you. Nothing wrong with alcohol anyway. But
nothing wrong with alcohol.
But in the last earnings call, right? I think you made a reference to potentially partnering with a US MSO at some point. Maybe you want to give more context about that. And the angle of the question is, yes, we understand you are in the US with hemp food, with non-alc drinks, hemp-derived Delta beverages, Delta 9 beverages now, beer, but you're not in the cannabis business per se, right? Canopy has Canopy USA, SNDL has set up Sunstream USA, OGI is talking about making acquisitions, all of these via what they call a ring fence structure. How are you thinking about doing deals in the US? And in the context of other people doing deals already, how long can you wait to make deals?
So I can wait as long as it takes to do the right deal, Pablo. And it's not to do a deal where a lot of these companies want to do stuff in the US today because they don't have a presence in the US. We have a strong presence in the US, okay? So with that, making the deal, number one, we're one of the largest grower of cannabis in the world today with over 5 million square feet. And trust me, it's taken us 5 years to learn about growing cannabis in 1.5 million square foot facilities, okay? And we know how to grow cannabis today to get the yields with the genetics, to get the right bud, to get the potency, and that takes a lot of growing. They don't have, there's not those grow facilities in the US today. So number one, we know how to grow cannabis. We sell close to 100 million pre-rolls a year. We have 10, 15, pre-roll machines. We know how to create and process flower. We know how to do vapes. We know how to do edibles. We know how to drinks in Canada and between our European business in regards to our medical business. So everything we know in Canada and Europe, we could easily transform and bring to the US. But until we know what we can do here, we can't do it. It's a guessing game. Secondly, is this here. Again, if medical cannabis becomes legal, then we have a strong medical business today in Europe. We have a medical business in Canada. We can start selling a lot of that in the US, and hopefully with NAFTA and crossing borders and GMP, certified, we're able to go ahead and do that. With safe banking, in regards to safe banking today and ring fence, well, we do that anyway with all our US businesses from our Canadian businesses. So I think, again, depending upon what happens upon legalization, depending upon all the tax rules that change, Tilray could jump into that in many different ways. One is a startup from scratch using our assets that we have both in Canada or Europe, our assets that we have in the US today with our brands that we already have. And last but not least, we do have a balance sheet there. We could go out and buy something or buy something small and grow it. But again, today, if someone gave me a white sheet of paper, I'm not sure what's the strategy because I don't know, ultimately what's the legalization and what I'm able to do in the US today. Because, if rescheduling happens, that's one thing. If medical cannabis legalizes, that's another thing. If Safe Bank Act comes into place, that's another thing. So, hey, tell me what I can do today. The only strategy that I'm going to do today is build out a strong US businesses with adjacency to the cannabis business. And once I know what cannabis is, from a legalization rescheduling can do, I would pivot into that business upon knowing what's the right way to go. And being able to do that takes knowledge, takes brands, and takes the balance sheet to do it.
Sure. So look, the last question on that subject, and I'll use that as a segue. There's obviously many scenarios. Let's see, which candidate wins the election, what happens with rescheduling, what does it get done, how quickly. But let's take the Kamala Harris scenario. Vice President Harris, let's say she gets elected. She wants to, apparently, based on the comments she's made before, she wants to legalize cannabis, right? She wants to deschedule, which to me means doing away with the license restricted model of each state being a silo. It would mean an open market with interstate trade if she wants to deschedule. Whether she has the 60 votes in the Senate to get that done, it's a big question mark. But let's assume that happens, that gets done in the next few years. Federal legalization of rec and interstate trade, full descheduling. How well could you participate in that market?
So again, with that, there would be lots of greenhouses for us to go by. Again, what I said, if part of that was allowing GMP product to be shipped from Canada, we have 5 million square feet of grow in Canada today. And if we could ship our products into the US, and we could take some of our beer brands today, our Manitoba Harvest brands, or some of our current cannabis brands that we have in Canada, we would have the infrastructure, the know-how to jump into that business right away. And again, the balance sheet to fund it. On the other hand, there's going to be smaller cannabis companies out there that are already multi-state operators that I think would look for a bigger partner, and either we partner with them, we buy it, or something, is ultimately to use them as our foundation to grow it out into the 50 states. We also, have something called Medmen that we still own the IP for. And do we use the Medmen brand to ultimately still, grow within the US? So there's optionality. I just hate, making decisions when I don't know what I can make a decision on.
Right. No, I got it.
But there's plenty. I will tell you, the thing is what we have the know-how to grow cannabis, and it's not easy to grow cannabis. We have the know-how with strains. We have the know-how with genetics. We have the people resources that know how to do this. And last but not least, we have the balance sheet, and we're just not going to throw good money after bad, of course. Mm-hmm. We have the balance sheet to decide which is the best way, which is the right return for our investors, and which is the right way to do it for consumers. And again, we already have, as you heard me say before, 19 brands in beer. We have our spirits brands, and we have our Manitoba Harvest. Can they translate into, cannabis brands, if that made sense? And again, Pablo, if nothing happens and no rescheduling, no legalization, we already have a good size, business in the US in the consumer products business. That's a lifestyle business that we're bringing people together that we're going to continue to grow and do future acquisitions of.